Today we're going to be dealing with the floor in this garage. When we park the vehicle inside, the snow melts and the water runs off to the sides into the walls. We don't have a drain on the floor, so we're going to try to come up with a budget-friendly solution to this. So I've been thinking about this for a couple months now, how I could best deal with this, with my drainage issue in our garage here. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm going to need to put some kind of channels along both of these side walls and a basin into the floor to catch the water. We don't have any plumbing or any drainage into the garage, so we're unable to gravity drain or pump. So my thought process is to just collect the water in a basin and let it evaporate, and when the basin's full, we'll just empty it with a shop vac, or maybe a long-term goal would be to install a sump pump. So I went to the hardware store, and here's my supplies. This is what I came up with. I've got a tube. I think this is a 5-inch, 6-inch PVC or ABS pipe, about a 18-inch piece, cap for the one end. My thinking is to cut a hole in the concrete, bury this tube as a basin into the floor, into the ground. And then I found a floor cover, this is a PVC cover, and I will install it in such a way so that this is level with my concrete, just a touch lower preferably, and we'll pour some self-leveling compound around it just to smooth it out. So that is my basin. For the floor channels, my thought process was to take an angle grinder with a diamond blade and to cut a V-slot along both side walls and the back and have them join into this basin, which I'm going to make. Because my floor is not level, I have to consider the slot not being level. So what I'm going to do is figure out how level my floor is, what my biggest variance is, and then from there on, I will know how deep of a slot I need to cut. Once I've cut my slot, I will thin up some self-leveling compound, pour it into the slot, and let my slots level out. That way I know I won't have a deep puddle standing in the slot anywhere. Sure, there may be some moisture that will reside. The majority of it should be able to drain. So that is kind of the process here. Okay, to find the slope variance of my floor, I'm going to use a laser level. You don't have to be precise here, but you need to know that if your floor dips about ½ an inch, maybe you should make a 1-inch trench. So I'm going to be using a laser, and I'll just measure the perimeter, and that will give me a good idea of what I'm dealing with. Okay, so it looks like I'm dealing with about a 3/4 inch variance to 1 inch. I've got a high spot in that corner. This wall is fairly even, it's about a ½ inch difference. So my goal is going to be to make a trench that's slightly deeper than 1 inch. That way I'll have a really shallow trench at some points, and at others it'll be about a ½ inch, 3/4 inch deep trench, which I'm okay with. I'd rather have that than have my walls rot out. I want this trench to be as unintrusive into my space as possible, and so I'll be keeping my cut at roughly 6 inches to the center of the channel from the wall. And my thought is to go about 1.5 inches wide on the channel. That should give me plenty of area to work with. And because I'm planning to make my cuts at an angle, I'm hoping that the points will meet or nearly meet, which will make breaking out the concrete easier. And then to get the smooth base inside of the channel later, the smooth bottom, that's what the self-leveling compound will be for. So I'm going to mark out a few spots along the floor, draw my lines, figure out where I want to put my basin in, and we'll start the cuts. Of course, this would be much easier if I had a snap line. And I know fairly well where my trouble spots are. From the back to the garage door here, I'm going to keep my distance a bit further. I'm going to go 10 inches on the center. I don't really have a big reason for that other than I know that the back portion of the floor is sloped out, so I'm okay there. And I will be opening up the concrete a bit further. I would just like to keep away from the opening. Okay, I'll find out the center of my garage here, mark out where I want my basin to be. quick tip for you. If you're trying to find out the center of a space, you can measure a specific distance in, eyeball where the center is. In my case, I went to 70 inches. I measured 70 inches from both sides and marked it. That gave me 2 lines, and then I just need to figure out the difference of those 2 lines. So it's a smaller number to work with. Okay, so here's what we got so far. My plan is to start right in this area. This is a high spot. The biggest travel spot is right here. So my channel will be going along the edge of the wall. I'll make a turn there. We have the basin in this area, center, so we don't drive over it with the car tires. And then it just wraps around. Okay, here's where we're at. We've cut our grooves all throughout, and now we are ready to start hammering. So because we're doing this on a budget, we're going to try to use a hammer and a chisel, see how that goes. Right, trying to make the hole for our pit here. I have a bunch of hammer drills, all of them are not working, so we won't talk about that right now. I'm going to try to drill a few holes into the concrete and see if I can get a starting edge to start breaking out the concrete here where I want my pit to be. Okay, I got my hole dug and I've got my bottom glued into my pipe here. What I'm going to do is set the pipe to the level I need it, which should be right there. Basically to the level where this is slightly lower than my floor. And then I'm going to pour concrete into the hole to fill it in place to hold the pipe. And I'm going to just pour the concrete flush the top of my pipe here. Once that concrete has cured, I'm going to come in with a grinder and I'm going to grind the concrete into the plastic, slope it so that most of the water will go into the pipe. I understand that it's going to seep in between the pipe and the concrete. I'm not too concerned about that in this location. Just to keep my pipe in place, I'm going to put some chunks into there just to weigh it down a bit, and then I'm going to tape a piece of poly over the top, over the opening, so that I don't pour concrete into there accidentally. And then once the concrete is cured, I can cut that away. I'm going to be using some Quikrete fine, and I'm going to be mixing it fairly thin, just so I can get it in, because I don't have a lot of space to work it into there. This is going to be my vibrator. I'm just going to wet the area. Okay, time to prime. So this is actually an important step. If you skip this step, you will most likely end up with a leveling compound that'll start to crack. So we would not need to pour in a compound. The only reason I am doing this is so that I have an easier time cleaning this channel. And it's also going to prevent from certain portions of the channel to have puddling. There'll be a lower level of water that will reside. Alright, we'll let that dry up, cure a bit, and then we'll get to pouring the leveling compound. Just wanted to show you guys quickly how I prepped this. I used some plumber's putty, and I made two, let's call them dams, and I blocked off the entryway here and taped the inside of this cap to keep the leveling compound from coming into the pipe. And so my thought is I'm going to pour the compound in, I'm going to fill this up to how much I would like, and then I'll be able to pick the putty out afterwards. I might just end up scoring it, cutting out the putty that's exposed, and then if I need to, I'll use a chisel or a screwdriver or something just to kind of pry it out from underneath. We'll see how that goes. I think that's my best option here with what I'm doing. All right, I think we're done. Got my compound poured. That gives me a nice flat bottom, just for ease of cleaning, basically. This is how this turned out. So the plumber's putty I used just allowed me to make a bit of a tunnel underneath. We'll see how long that holds up. I'm sure this will crack when we drive over it, but that's all right. I'm not too concerned about that. The whole process, whole project isn't a pretty one. It's just a solution. Yeah, so we will dump a bucket of water and let's see what it does. Okay, I think I've got probably close to the amount of water that my sump there can handle. So let's see what happens. So it looks like I went a bit aggressive with the water. Making a bit of a mess here, for sure. That sounds promising. Can't see much. So, don't dump a bucket of water in the garage. That's the take I get from that. Alright, so was this a success? I would say so. I did dump a bucket of water, and that was more of a current than the channel could handle. I could have thought that through, I didn't. Seeing as that the low spot is here, so most of the water will come this way. However, once some of it got to the other end, it reduced the levels here. It's now not flowing over anymore, which is great. When the car is in here, we don't get quite that gush of water, so I'm happy with that. Yeah, and the water seems to be draining well into the pit, so I'm calling this a win. Last time that I need to vacuum out the entryway on the other side of this wall. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps some of you guys. This is a very rudimentary, budget-friendly way of doing this, but for me, I think this will do the job just perfectly.